anything like that. It was never even to leave New York. It was to just, I had the van, I tried living in it for a little bit, it worked out, and then I ended up kind of taking that just past the 1-2 month point and just kept doing it. Hey everybody, my name is Mike. I'm standing in front of my 2001 Chevy Express 3500. It is about 26 feet long with all included bumper to bumper. It has a deck over the cab there. I have some storage up there. There's a 14-foot box on the back, and it has the 6.5 liter Detroit diesel engine. So I'd love to take you around and show you a little bit about how I live. If you're interested, show you the inside, the outside. We have to get in through the cab because that is the only way in. It is a pass-through. And just in case you're curious, I've been in this one for about 3 years, total of about 5 years on the road. So this is my second rig. Follow me. So maybe a little bit different from what people have seen elsewhere. When I bought the box, I didn't add any other doors to it. So this is the only way to get in. Yeah, you can slide this over. This also locks when I'm not in the truck. I can lock it for security. But yeah, 3 years in and out. This is the only way. So come on in and check it out. Come on over. We'll start in this corner. So when I first had the truck, maybe a year went by before I actually had a place to hang my shirts. And what I did is I built this pretty simple little coat rack here. I got all my winter stuff now that we're in November. A little shoe storage down here, flip-flop shower shoes. Down here we have a diesel heater. That thing, if you know me, I'm a big advocate. These are like 150 bucks, lifesavers, game changers. I've got some more footwear here. All my clothing, little bathroom kind of like, you know, medicine cabinet area here. And as we come back up, I got some water filtration, just a tabletop chlorine and heavy metal filter there. And then some other stuff if I take you around. We have the rotisserie. So this is a little unusual. I really like to cook on the road. I just like to cook in general. And when I first started out in that first van, I had no way to cook. After a couple of weeks, I bought a camping stove, so like a single burner propane stove. That was great. I have since graduated to a dual burner propane stove, which we'll see on the other side over here in the kitchen. Grill for outdoor cooking, Instant Pot for pressure cooking, and rotisserie machine, which also doubles as an air fryer, triples as a dehydrator, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff right here. So these are all the functions. I love this thing. How did I start living in a vehicle? Well, I was going to grad school back in 2018, 19, and at the end of 2019 I graduated and was looking at apartments in Brooklyn, coming from Long Island, which is where I grew up. And the apartments were like $2,600 a month, $3,000 a month, and I just didn't really want to pay rent. So I had a van. I had a 99 Dodge Ram 1500, like a family travel van, and I ended up taking a job in the city after I had graduated and figured if I could do this for like a month, if I could live in the van for a month and just kind of save a couple bucks, I'd have enough to be able to afford rent there. I'd already had the van from you know, doing these weekend trips up to the Adirondacks. Somebody that I was dating at the time, we would take it to go, you know, on overnights, weekends, stuff like that. Sleep in it at a trailhead, and then be able to go hiking for the day and then come back. So coming over here, you'll see we have the Alpool. I think this is a T60. It's what they call a dual zone. So one side is fridge, one side is freezer. You can kind of mess with that and change the temperatures there. But this is where I store my food for the most part. I have another freezer, which we'll get to in a minute. And what you'll see as we move around the area, you'll see a whole bunch of things that kind of look like they were just dropped in place. I didn't really build out the truck like you may see in some other people's projects where they took a lot of time and planned and engineered certain things. That's all great. I found a lot of these things as I was moving through the building process. So as I was focusing on building my electrical, for example, I was staying at a buddy's house and I was just every day just kind of keeping an eye out for things that maybe people were getting rid of, throwing out, that I could take and repurpose. So things like the dresser, it's just a standard IKEA type dresser. I didn't buy it, I actually found it, but something like that would probably cost 50 bucks. You know, I didn't really build anything in here, I guess is what I'm saying. I've taken a lot of things and just screwed it to the wall. This wall is actually the original wall that was like in the truck. This truck actually used to be a floor contractor's truck. So it was pretty bare bones, but had this plywood on it. I just kind of painted over it. And then as we move around the truck, there's like stuff that I just picked up everywhere. So I'll kind of point that out. So as we come through here, there's a little table. This kind of doubles as a second chair. People sit on here as well. Another chair here, which was my old office chair. And now I use it as a step to get into bed. This section is the powerhouse of the whole truck. So as I mentioned, I live and work from here. And on most days I'm in places that have pretty good sun, so I rely heavily on solar. I started out with 600 watts of solar on the roof. That's 3 200 watt panels. And over the years, I've upgraded to now 1200 watts total, which is pretty much the entire roof, give or take. The PV line's coming in from the solar up here. That comes down to a charge controller, which is down here, and this is the monitor for that, so I can see how many watts I'm getting. Right now, 500. Then we have the battery monitor. I can see the state of charge of the battery. I can monitor, how full it is, what the health of the battery is. We have the weather station. So this was like a $40 piece on Amazon. Basically, there's an outdoor sensor and an indoor sensor, so it'll tell me the humidity, the barometric pressure, the temperature inside and outside, which is neat to have. And then other stuff that you want, obviously an inverter. You have I just put this in a couple weeks ago, shore power, so you could charge off of a 110 outlet if you're visiting friends or if you're at, let's say, a campground where they have like a plug. Batteries are down there. This is a DC to DC charger, so I can charge while I'm driving. This whole thing was awesome. You don't need to have such a big system. I mean, this is probably like mid to upper mid range in terms of power and capacity, but I know people that have spent way more and do like all Victron stuff, and that's really high quality, and maybe they have 2 or 3 times as much battery as I have. But I know people also, like when I started out, I just started with a very inexpensive system. It just has to suit the needs of your power consumption. So for me, this today is suiting my needs very well. Maybe I'll expand it at some point, or maybe in another build I'll roll it back. It all depends on what you use. Board here, there's a fuse box. And this is all, there's like 12 different components in there. One of those runs up to the lights. The funny story about the lights is that while I've invested in all these other areas like the solar and the batteries, and like I have some money in that, I do a lot of things just in the moment to solve a problem. And as I was building the van, my buddy and I were putting together the solar panels one day, and it got dark outside and we needed to keep working. So we zipped together a couple of 12-volt lights that I had into this strip of wood. And I just screwed it to the wall to be able to get us through the night of working. And then it worked, so I left it there, and I built out the rest of the van, the truck. And this was a very temporary solution that ended up still being a good solution. So like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I take that to another level because I forget about it. I don't care. So it doesn't have to look good, it just has to work. And this works. So the first, I would say, 6 weeks or so of me actually living in my van at all. Like, I've never lived on the road before, never lived in a van before. The van was not set up like this truck is today. It was really a progression of understanding technology and adopting things and getting systems in place as I needed them. So the first van was very basic. And so I didn't really need anything in the area that I was parking in other than just a safe spot to sleep. And when I first got into living in the van, I would park wherever I could find an open spot in Brooklyn or Queens that was near a subway that I could then take into Manhattan and go to work. And the way that I would save where I slept that night was I would put a pin on Google Maps. Like if I took a screenshot of Google Maps on my phone, you would see pins all over different parts of Brooklyn and Queens. And this was great because it allowed me to save a location with like a date that I had parked at it. The problem with this is that it became confusing after you had more than like a dozen pins, which could have been just, a couple of weeks worth of parking. You might have a dozen pins because you have to move constantly for alternate side street sweeping and all. So I was working on a sales floor with a bunch of other folks that every once in a while would go out for drinks or dinner or something. And you in your 20s, you're finding yourself out having a good time on a Friday or a Saturday night, Friday after work, and you get a little into it, and you go to get home at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And a couple of times what actually happened is I went to the wrong pin, and I would take a train out to somewhere in Brooklyn, and the van wasn't there. So this happened 2 different times. Basically, I had to get Ubers to go all the way across town, so it ended up being quite costly. But it was kind of the funny thing was like, yeah, I lived in a van, but I didn't always remember where the van was parked because I moved so frequently. So I thought I had the right pin, and I would go take the train to the wrong pin and then have to call a cab basically to go across town. The other lighting option that I have that I put in probably about a year after I started living in this was this LED strip that goes around the kind of the crown of the inside of the truck. So if you notice here, this is the remote for it. I can change those lights with a controller. I also have an app on my phone that changes them as well. These were super inexpensive. I think it was $25 for like 100 feet of this, and this is 50 feet of it that's up. But this brings me also to the bed area. So you can see when these lights are off, this just kind of gives a nice soft glow to the area. It gives it a nice kind of like homey feel. This is the bed area where, you know, I have my my bed raised up to about hip height, which gives me a lot of space underneath to get all of my stuff in there. I have to admit, it's a little bit of a little self-conscious almost about how much stuff I have now versus how much I had 3 years ago when I first got on the road. But I will say that everything that I have has a very specific purpose. I just have more fun things that I didn't have 3 years ago. So under the bed, we have things like a stand-up paddleboard, inflatable. There's a mountain bike under there. There's a couple of camp chairs. There's also a 30-gallon freshwater tank, which faces the back, but is still under the bed, and a whole bunch of tools. So this is where I sleep. Sometimes it's where I hang out. If I'm in a really nice place, but right now I'm in the city, so I don't open the door so much because I don't want people to know what I have kind of going on in here. But when I'm parked in a place where there's a nice view, maybe a mountain or a big like field out west, I can roll this door up, and you see these tracks along the side of the door, side of the wall. This is where the door sits, so it comes down a little bit lower, but it's great. I can also stand and work at the bed, like from the floor, and it's kind of like at chest height, which is nice. Working our way around, we have some other stuff over here, kind of like storage. I have some more clothing. I actually have a suit in there for job interviews, weddings, whatever I'm going to. And then I have like a laptop bag here. I have fan, odds and ends, hammock, and rainproof gear, and a whole bunch of stuff. This is kind of funny. I actually wanted to get some overhead cabinets, but being as cheap as I am, I just figured I'll eventually come across some. And I found that in the trash, just exactly when I needed it. So I was just keeping with this theme of like just throw it all together and deal with it later. But this, you know, this has served my needs really well. It's just kind of like storage for kitchen stuff, pantry stuff, and stuff always is falling out because when you drive, everything moves. But these all also latch, so when I'm driving, nothing actually comes out. All right, well, this is how I spend 8 hours of my day, but there's another 8 hours of my day where I'm spending it here, more or less. This is my office area. There is a second monitor here that is on a swing arm. So I pull my laptop out in the morning, sit down with a cup of coffee, and I plug my laptop in and I start getting to work. And what that looks like is something like this. I do sales and sales development for work. So I work a standard like 40 hours a week. I spend a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time on calls, like Zoom calls and stuff like that. So I have every electronic, office device that I need in here to be able to do my job right and effectively. I have Starlink outside, which has been a game changer for anybody looking for internet. A little bit on the pricier side, but it is high-speed internet. Not a plug for Starlink, but it works. Yeah, nice little office setup. I have also in here there's a whole bunch of like spices and kind of like foodstuffs, and so we have 8 hours in the bed, 8 hours at my desk, and then I have another 8 hours. So I spent a lot of that time cooking, as I talked about with the air fryer and the rotisserie machine. But I also have this awesome piece here that, surprise, I found in the trash. And I repurposed it. If we maybe come over here, I'll show you the kitchen area. Pretty clean, open counter space. This was a piece that I found out in Long Island, which is where I'm from. Somebody was throwing this out. I remember the night that I picked this up, the truck was empty. And I saw somebody throwing it out, and I had the old van still. And I ended up just fitting it through the door. I could barely close the door. It was unfinished, it was missing a drawer, but I said, you know what, this is gonna be a good starting piece. So I got it in here, I kind of zipped it to the wall with some screws, and then I sanded it down, I refinished it. It came out pretty great. I actually love the look of this, and it's a real, it's a hard wood, which is unlike some of the other stuff you get really cheaply. So here we have a 2-burner propane stove that I cut into the surface of the countertop here. And then I just have some stuff screwed to the walls. I like to use these little cheap hooks. I think I bought 40 of these for maybe like 15 bucks a couple years ago. It looks like you would have to tie all this stuff down, but to be honest, things just kind of stay where they are because you don't drive the truck that fast. I'm not whipping it around, so things very rarely fall off the wall. But under here, we have a silverware drawer. So I have a whole bunch of silverware there, either enough for me to go a couple of days without doing dishes, or entertain for 4 or 5 people, which you might be surprised, I do kind of frequently. And one of the things I like best about this is that even though I found it, somebody's thrown it out, it actually still had this really neat old vintage looking, I don't know, kind of antique key that fits in there, it stays in, actually locks, which is neat. So I can lock all my kitchen gear so people don't come in and take my kitchen stuff. Super messy, but you get an idea if you look through here of what's in here. It's just like under the counter type things. I have my coffee maker, pots and pans, funnels, glassware. I don't buy glassware often, but I'll use bottles that I repurpose. And then I have stuff like a fire safe down there for some documents. A propane tank in there. I would definitely recommend venting your propane tanks. I did not vent this one, and yeah, you can let me know what your thoughts are on that. The last piece on this wall is the bathroom unit. Again, found this, somebody was throwing it out on Long Island, and I figured with this I wanted to have a full-size sink. It doesn't have to be a full-size kitchen sink or a bar sink, but I wanted to have something where I can come over and actually wash my hands, because in the first van I had basically a mixing bowl that I had turned into a hand washing station, places to brush my teeth, but I wanted to have a high flow system where I could actually wash my hands, I could do my dishes, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. So I have the water pump here on a switch. I just make sure it's on. I come over here, I can kind of conserve my water, or if I have enough, I have a total of 48 gallons on board. So I can kind of clean up there quick. This is awesome also for when you have to get into fixing things, like when something breaks on the truck or on the motorcycle, or if I'm just doing service on it. You can get really greasy and grimy, changing chains and tires and all sorts of stuff going on. So it's nice to have a place where you can actually come and kind of get into washing up, as opposed to trying to conserve water to the max. And under here, it's kind of cluttered here, but you have the chemical under sink area. So we have a 5-gallon, super simple gray water catch. So anything I do in the sink goes right into this. Does not drain out to the street. I just prefer to take it out when it's full, and I keep a close eye on it. And then I have on the freshwater side a 6-gallon container. I have a total of 3 of those. So when this one is empty, I just swap it out for another, or I can fill it up from the water system in the back. I like to consider myself a real big design person. Maybe not how other people look at it, but everything to me that I have in here, I wouldn't put it up unless it meant something to me. So what I like to do with people sometimes is when they come in, if I have someone hanging out in here or we're talking or whatever, and they're like, oh, what is that? I kind of like having people, when people want to ask about things, because everything has a story. If we move around from, anything you see on the walls here, like this was a gift, this was a thank you from somebody. This has a big story from this time I was in a bar in New York City years ago. This I found out somebody was throwing out. And then I have memorabilia here, photos with friends. It's kind of a hodgepodge of all different kinds of things that have affected me or influenced me over time. Friends, family, experiences. things that I found, things that this was on a mountaintop in the middle of a storm when I was by myself checking out hot springs in Oregon. I like looking at that. You know, this is a snakeskin from Arizona. There's gifts. These are both things that were given to me. Things that I've had forever. I was in judo as a kid, and this is a towel I've had since like, I don't know, I was like 10 years old. I like to just find things that mean something to me and kind of just put them up. So everything from Buddy, who is a painting of a dog. People ask often, is that your dog? It's not. I found that in the garbage. I like that someone else painted a painting of their dog, and I have it. I think that's hilarious. And then as we move over, we have a big thing in the community are people's stickers, brands and stuff like that. There's a couple of brands that if they sent me a sticker I put up, this is kind of like that evolving space here. We have obviously the OG Van Alley sticker, the original design, the emblem. That kind of means a lot to me. This was actually on the original van as well, and now it's kind of living in here, and it'll come wherever I go. Yeah, and we have all sorts of other stuff just kind of like plastered on the wall, and this was a birthday gift. On my birthday out in Arizona, I was gifted that, and then I have just other random stuff kind of. It may not be the typical van build, but when I come in here at the end of a day of like, you know, hanging out, doing whatever I'm doing outside the truck, having all of these things around me makes it my space, and it makes it a really comfortable place for me. If you've noticed, I have no windows, and so what that means is that when I'm in here, I'm really in my own little bubble. I'm parked on the street right now in the city in New York, but I'm often parked in the middle of nowhere out in Utah or Arizona or Wyoming. It could be anywhere. Having all these little trinkets around just makes it kind of feel like home to me. So it works for me. Best compliment I've ever gotten on it, actually, the one I took most to heart, is I had a couple of friends of mine, Kyle and Ayla, come in, and when Ayla came in, she said her first thought was, oh man, it looks like a dive bar in here, because there's things just like screwed to the walls all over the place, and I thought that was such a cool like vibe. So I tell people that all the time now. So thanks, Ayla and Kyle, love you guys. But yeah, this is my home. Humble little place, but I hope you enjoy, taking a look at it. If anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to hit me up. Also, vanlife718 on Instagram. But happy to chat about anything you see in here, questions you might have about me and my travels, or just any of the stuff you see.
So that's it. We filmed it. Here's Caleb's van. Some of you remember that. Hopefully this is helpful. Maybe you want to be partially homeless. Full homeless, I guess. If you watch this far, right, full homeless. Seems to be the trend of these videos. By the way, Caleb pays for a parking spot. He's just visiting today. Anyway, if you just skipped to the end of the trend, right, trendsetter. Anyway, I sell t-shirts, and maybe you should subscribe. I don't know. But that's all I got. Have a wonderful doom scrolling wherever you're off to next. Say bye, Mike.